At 63, I was thrown out of my own house by my wealthy daughter-in-law, humiliated, erased, and declared too forgetful to survive. But when I uncovered her $1 million fraud, I didn't beg for mercy. I took back my name, my husband's legacy, and the life she tried to steal. The smell of burnt beignets clung to the air like guilt. Alma Brooks stood frozen in the kitchen, her trembling hands gripping the counter as her daughter-in-law's heels clicked against the marble. "Help," Bianca LaSalle scoffed, waving a perfectly manicured hand toward the pan. "You call this helping? You almost set the kitchen on fire again." Her red silk robe shimmered under the morning sun, filtering through lace curtains, so beautiful, so cruel. Across the island, Wesley sat with his phone pretending not to hear. Alma's son. The boy she'd raised alone through hurricanes and hunger. "Wesley," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Say something." He didn't look up. "Mom, please? Bianca's just stressed. Maybe give her some space." Space. In the house she'd paid for. Bianca's voice turned sharp, slicing the air. "You heard him. This is my house now, and I'm done playing nursemaid to a senile old woman." Alma's heart clenched. "I'm not senile." "Oh, please," Bianca said with a laugh that could curdle milk. "You forgot your own birthday last month." Alma swallowed hard. The candles, the empty table. Bianca had claimed the bakery messed up the order. Wesley never asked. "Get out of my house," Bianca said, stepping closer, eyes glittering. "I dare you." The world seemed to tilt. Alma's fingers brushed the worn locket around her neck, the one Harold had given her before he died. Her late husband's voice echoed faintly in her mind. "Don't let them break you, Alma. You're stronger than you know." The coffee mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Bianca didn't flinch. "Guess I'll call a cleaning service," she muttered. Alma straightened her spine. "You won't need to." She walked upstairs each step, trembling, but her face steady. The guest room, her room now, smelled like lavender and loss. She opened the old suitcase she hadn't touched in decades. Folded blouses, a framed photo of Wesley missing his front tooth. On the nightstand, her hands found a pen. She wrote a single line on a note card. "Thank you for showing me exactly where I stand." Then she placed it where Wesley kept his keys, grabbed her suitcase and stepped into the damp New Orleans morning. Rain began to fall, soft, forgiving. And for the first time in years, Alma didn't look back. The rain turned heavier as Alma stepped onto the porch, suitcase trembling in her grip. Cold drops slid down her silver hair, soaking the thin shawl she'd grabbed in haste. Behind her, through the fogged glass, the chandelier glowed faintly, Bianca's silhouette still pacing, furious, triumphant. The taxi pulled up its wipers, slicing the storm. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. Alma hesitated, staring at the address book in her trembling hand. Then, softly, "Bywater, Dauphine Street." As the car rolled through the wet streets, New Orleans came alive in flashes, neon reflections, magnolia petals plastered against sidewalks, the hum of a saxophone leaking from a dim cafe. The world hadn't ended. It was simply rearranging itself. Her fingers brushed the locket again. Inside, Harold's photo had faded, but the engraving still gleamed. "To my Alma, don't forget who you are." She closed her eyes and remembered that night, years ago, the Mardi Gras parade. Harold's laughter, the confetti in his hair. "You and your magnolias," he'd teased. "They bloom after every storm," she'd replied. Now the memory was her only warmth. The cab stopped before a pastel blue shotgun house. The porch light flickered on. Yvette stood in the doorway, robe tied tight, surprise, softening into worry. "Alma, Lord, you're drenched." Alma tried to smile, but her lips quivered. "She kicked me out." Yvette pulled her in, wrapping her in a towel that smelled like lemon and soap. Then, "This is home now." and I've got strong coffee and a roof that doesn't judge." For the first time all day, Alma let herself exhale. The thunder outside faded into the steady patter of rain on tin roofs. Somewhere beyond the window, magnolia blossoms swayed in the stormlight, white, pure, undefeated. Morning crept in through lace curtains, painting the small bywater room in pale gold. Alma woke to the sound of clinking cups and the smell of strong chicory coffee. Yvette stood by the stove in her housecoat, humming along to a scratchy jazz record. When she turned, her eyes softened. "You slept at all?" Cher Alma shook her head. "Dreamed of Harold again." He was laughing. "Said I still make the best coffee, only I don't even drink it anymore." Yvette smiled gently and set a steaming mug before her. "Then drink mine. Lord knows you need something stronger than regret." They sat at the little wooden table, rain tapping softly against the shutters. Alma's hands trembled around the cup. "I just wanted to help Yvette. I never meant to make her hate me." "She don't hate you," Yvette said, voice firm. "She fears you, a woman who's lived through grief and still stands. That's power." Alma gave a faint, disbelieving laugh, then sighed. "All I have left is what Harold left behind, and that isn't much." Yvette glanced toward the old cedar trunk Alma had carried in. "What's in that box?" "Just memories," Alma murmured. "Memories don't rattle like that." Yvette knelt and lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in yellowed linen, were Harold's Mardi Gras sketches. Brilliant colors, delicate stitching notes. The signature Brooks Designs, 1982. Alma touched the faded paper as if it were a heartbeat. For a long moment, the two sisters said nothing. Then Yvette whispered, half smiling, "You realize, Cher, those dresses might be worth more than you think." Alma looked up, a spark of defiance lighting her tired eyes. For the first time, she said softly, "I hope she underestimated me." Yvette spread the sketches across the table, each page trembling under the slow turn of the ceiling fan. Dozens of gowns, vibrant feathers, sequins, and golden embroidery filled the room like ghosts of Mardi Gras past. Alma traced one with her fingertip. "He worked on these right before he died," she murmured. "Said they were for a client on St. Charles Avenue. I never asked who." Yvette's brow furrowed as she lifted a folded clipping tucked between the papers. "Look at this. Legacy Designs reimagined Hollywood Eyes New Orleans couture for upcoming biopic." Alma blinked. "That's Harold's work," she whispered. "Those sleeves? That stitching curve? It's his handwriting." Yvette poured more coffee, voice trembling with excitement. "They're paying serious money, Cher. Maybe hundreds of thousands. If Harold's name is on that design line, you might be owed a fortune." Alma shook her head slowly, disbelief mingling with fear. No, I'd have known. Someone would have called." "Unless someone stopped them from calling," Yvette said quietly. The room fell silent except for the hum of the fan and the rain against the window. A shiver ran through Alma. She remembered the unopened mail Bianca used to stack neatly on the kitchen counter, the times she'd said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." Yvette leaned closer. "When was the last time you saw a letter addressed to you?" Alma's mind raced backward through months of silence, through bills. She never saw doctors. She never called conversations Bianca always managed. She looked up, voice barely a whisper. Maybe they already did call. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Royal Street shimmered under a thin drizzle brass music, drifting from a distant corner. The sign above the narrow doorway read, "Claiborne and Hartwell, attorneys at law." Yvette squeezed Alma's hand. "You sure you ready?" Cher Alma took a breath. "Ready or not, I need to know." Inside, the old office smelled of paper and pipe smoke. Framed photos of parades and mayors lined the walls. Behind a mahogany desk, sat Mr. Claiborne, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, his bow tie slightly crooked. He looked up from a file. "Mrs. Brooks, your husband was quite the designer, if I recall correctly. Mardi Gras royalty, wasn't he?" Alma managed a faint smile. "He always said, 'New Orleans dressed better than Paris in February.'" Claiborne chuckled softly, then grew serious. "You mentioned something about sketches and a recent film project." Yvette opened the folder of drawings. "Sir, these belong to Harold Brooks, and this," she slid over the magazine clipping, "shows the same designs now credited to someone else." Claiborne adjusted his glasses, studying the signatures. "Well, I'll be damned. This is indeed Harold's hand. I handled estate matters for several clients that same year." "Hold on." He flipped through an old record book, tracing his finger down a page. "Yes. Harold filed a copyright claim in 1983. The designs were stored in our archive until the studio requested authentication this past summer." Alma's breath caught. "The studio?" He nodded. "They wired a retainer of $380,000 pending confirmation of the rightful beneficiary." Yvette's eyes widened. Beneficiary, meaning Alma. Claiborne hesitated. "That's where it gets complicated. The contact address listed was recently changed from your late husband's record on Dauphine Street to a new one on Magazine Street, belonging to a Mrs. Bianca LaSalle." The room went silent. Rain tapped faintly against the glass. Alma's knuckles whitened around her purse strap. "She changed it," she whispered. "She's been intercepting my mail." Claiborne leaned forward, voice low. "Mrs. Brooks, if that's true, it's not just unethical, it's criminal. We'll need to verify signatures and call the studio directly." Alma sat back, heart pounding. The humiliation of being thrown out now twisted into something sharper purpose. She looked at Yvette, eyes clear and cold. "If Bianca thought I'd stay quiet," she said softly, "she picked the wrong old woman." That night, Alma sat by Yvette's window watching the rain shimmer through the streetlight. A saxophone played somewhere down the block, slow, mournful, like a confession. Her thoughts drifted back to that house on Magazine Street, to all the little moments that hadn't made sense until now. Bianca sorting the mail every morning. "Don't worry, Mama Brooks, I'll handle the bills," she'd say with a dazzling smile. Bianca answering the phone first, always. "Oh, it's just another charity call, nothing important." Bianca insisting Alma stop driving because you get turned around too easily. Each memory landed like a stone in her chest. She'd believed it was kindness. Now she saw the pattern, one small freedom after another, quietly taken. The music outside shifted to a faster tempo, rain hitting the shutters harder. Alma pressed a trembling hand to her temple. How long had I been asleep inside my own life? Yvette stepped into the room carrying 2 cups of tea. "You're thinking too loud again," she teased gently. Alma managed a weak smile. "She changed my address, Yvette. My mail, my phone calls, my life. And I thanked her for it." Yvette sat beside her. "You trusted her. That's not a crime. What she did is." Outside, lightning flashed across the bayou sky, illuminating the magnolia tree in the yard, white petals glowing against the dark. Alma whispered, "She made me feel small so I'd stop looking up." Yvette touched her hand. "Then, lift your chin, Cher. Tomorrow we start looking." For the first time in years, Alma nodded, not out of agreement, but resolve. The next morning, Royal Street was slick with last night's rain. The magnolia trees dripped silver, and Alma felt her pulse match the rhythm of her heels on the wet pavement. Yvette walked beside her holding an umbrella against the humid gray sky. Inside Claiborne's office, the old lawyer already had papers spread across his desk. He looked up the moment Alma entered. "Mrs. Brooks," he said gravely, "I spent half the night digging through our archives. What I found isn't good, but it's clear. He slid a set of documents toward her, each bearing her name in flowing cursive. This is the power of attorney on file with the studio and our office dated 6 months ago. It authorizes one Bianca LaSalle to act on your behalf in all financial matters. Alma stared at the signature. Her name, her handwriting, or almost. But the loop of the B was wrong. The tail of the A stretched too far. "That's not mine," she whispered. "That's a forgery." Claiborne nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. But there's more." He pressed a button on his desk phone. The speakers crackled. A recorded call played. A woman's smooth, composed voice filled the room. "Yes, this is Mrs. Bianca LaSalle, acting for my mother-in-law, Alma Brooks. She's been unwell, early cognitive decline. I'm handling her affairs for her safety." Bianca's tone was syrup over poison, professional, polite, practiced. Alma's stomach turned. "She told them I was losing my mind." "She built a paper trail," Claiborne said. "Fake medical notes, adjusted mailing address, authorization copies sent to our office. Enough to make anyone believe she was managing things for your benefit." Yvette slammed her palm on the desk. "And the studio sent the check." Claiborne nodded grimly. "They wired the initial $380 to an escrow under LaSalle Holdings LLC. The final royalty payment hasn't been cleared yet." Alma felt her pulse race. Her throat tightened, breath shaky. She was going to steal everything Harold left behind. Claiborne leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Brooks, I'm filing a notice of dispute this afternoon. That'll freeze all transfers until we verify the rightful owner." Yvette crossed her arms. "And Bianca." Legally, Claiborne's eyes hardened. If this holds, she's committed fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. But we'll need proof more than a recording. Alma's gaze drifted to the rain streaking down the window. She saw Bianca's face in her mind, perfect, composed, smug. "Get out of my house, I dare you." Now the dare had changed. Alma straightened. "What kind of proof?" Claiborne handed her a paper. "Phone logs. If we can match her calls to the studio's timestamps, we have intent." Yvette took the paper. "Leave that to us." Claiborne smiled faintly. "I like the sound of that." As Alma rose to leave, her reflection flickered in the rain-streaked glass. For months, she'd seen an old woman fading away. Now she saw something else entirely, a survivor sharpening her edges. Outside, thunder rumbled again over the quarter. Yvette looked at her sister and grinned. "You ready to fight?" Alma adjusted her shawl chin high. "I'm done surviving," she said. "It's time to take back what's mine." The sisters stepped into the street as a brass band's trumpet flared from the corner, defiant and raw, just like them. The cafe on Chartres Street smelled of chicory and powdered sugar, a little too sweet for the conversation at hand. Alma and Yvette sat near the window, their reflections rippling in the glass as streetcars rolled past outside. Rain still drizzled, soft, relentless, like the truth itself. Yvette tapped her phone screen. "Here's the number for the studio." Claiborne said to call Act Natural, ask about the account. Alma hesitated, her thumb hovering over the green button. "What if they hang up?" "Then we call again," Yvette said firmly. "You've been quiet long enough." Alma took a deep breath and pressed call. The ringing seemed to last forever before a woman's polite voice answered. "Silver Line Pictures. Licensing Department. Hello?" Alma began, her voice trembling but steadying as she spoke. "This is Mrs. Alma Brooks. I'm calling regarding the Mardi Gras design royalties connected to my late husband, Harold Brooks." There was a pause. "Oh, yes, Mrs. Brooks. We've been in touch with your representative, Mrs. Bianca LaSalle. Is this about her request to expedite payment?" Alma froze. Her knuckles whitened around the phone. "My what, Mrs. LaSalle, your daughter-in-law? She provided the medical documents confirming your health condition. I'm glad to hear you're feeling better." Yvette's eyes widened. Alma's throat constricted, but she forced her voice out. What health condition? The woman hesitated. Ma'am, the papers stated early onset cognitive decline. We were told you preferred all business handled through her for your safety. For a moment, the cafe disappeared. No music, no voices. Only a ringing in her ears, sharp and hollow. Bianca's words from that morning came flooding back. You can't survive without us. I have no such condition, Alma said slowly, each word slicing through her fear. And I have not authorized Mrs. LaSalle or anyone else to act for me. Do you understand? Silence. Then the woman whispered, Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We'll flag the account immediately. Alma ended the call and lowered the phone. Her hands shook so violently that Yvette took it from her. That witch, Yvette breathed. She wasn't just stealing your money, Alma. She was erasing you. Alma stared out the rain-streaked window, her reflection blurred like a watercolor painting. She made me doubt my mind, Yvette. My memory. Every little mistake she turned into proof that I was fading. And now Alma's lips tightened. The trembling stopped. Now I remember everything. She reached for her notebook and began scribbling names, dates, every strange thing Bianca had ever said or done. Yvette watched silently, proud. Outside, the sky cleared a little, and a shaft of sunlight hit the magnolia tree across the street. For the first time, Alma noticed how its petals refused to fall even after the storm. The cafe was nearly empty when the call ended, but Alma sat frozen, her eyes fixed on nothing. Outside, the streetcar bell echoed faintly through the quarter, a sound she'd always loved today. It felt like a clock striking the hour of truth. She told the world I was sick, Alma whispered. She turned me into a ghost while I was still breathing. Yvette reached for her hand. Don't let her break you, Cher. But Alma wasn't crying, not yet. Her face was too still, her breath too controlled. It was the silence before the hurricane. She pushed back her chair and stood. I need air. They stepped outside into the thick, humid breeze. The rain had stopped leaving puddles that shimmered like mirrors on the cobblestones. Alma looked down and saw her reflection fractured across the water, old tired but unbroken. She changed my address, Alma said softly. My phone, my doctor, my name. Then her voice cracked. Do you know what that means, Yvette? She erased me. On paper, I don't exist. That was when the tears came. Not soft ones, sharp, gasping, unstoppable. Yvette pulled her close as the city hummed around them, car horns and jazz blurring into a single aching sound. People passed by without knowing they were walking past a woman who had just discovered the theft of her life. After a long moment, Alma straightened, wiping her face. Enough, she said. She wanted me weak. But I remember every insult, every lie, every letter she hid. Yvette nodded. Then let's start there. Alma's phone buzzed in her pocket. Claiborne's name flashed on the screen. She answered, voice still shaking. Mr. Claiborne, Mrs. Brooks. He said the words clipped, urgent. I just received confirmation from the bank. The escrow account LaSalle Holdings received the $380,000 wire transfer yesterday. Bianca signed for it digitally using your forged authorization. Yvette's jaw dropped. She already took it. Not entirely, Claiborne said. It's frozen pending verification. But she's trying to move it through a private brokerage under her name. If we act fast, we can stop her. Alma closed her eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Do it, she said. Stop her. Claiborne's voice softened. You understand, Mrs. Brooks, once we file this becomes a legal battle. Public. Messy. Are you ready for that? Alma glanced toward the magnolia tree across the street, its white blossoms glistening under the first thin streaks of sun. Yes, she said quietly. I've already been humiliated. I've already lost my home. I have nothing left to fear." After she hung up, Yvette squeezed her shoulder. "You sure you're ready to fight dirty?" Alma gave a bitter smile. "Honey, I was married to Harold Brooks. I know how to sew lace and stitch wounds." They laughed a small, broken laugh, but it felt human again. Yvette pulled out her phone. "Let's start by gathering proof. Texts, voicemails, mail receipts. Everything that witch ever touched." As they worked, Alma's anger shifted into something sharper, steadier. She wasn't just an old woman cleaning up a mess anymore. She was a storm retracing its path, ready to strike where it began. When they finally left the cafe, the French Quarter had turned golden, wet streets glowing under the late afternoon sun. The brass band from the corner struck up a tune, bold, reckless, like the heartbeat of New Orleans itself. Alma paused, suitcase, still by her chair, and whispered to herself, "Harold, if you can hear me, your girl's still got fight left." Yvette tilted her head. "What was that?" Alma smiled faintly. "Just talking to an old friend." Then as they crossed the street, she stopped and looked back toward the skyline where the spires of the cathedral pierced the clouds. She said, "I couldn't last a week without her." Alma murmured, "But she won't last a day once I'm done." Lightning cracked far off over the river, though the sky was clear. The wind lifted Alma's hair and carried the scent of magnolia through the air, sharp, sweet, and defiant. The fight had begun. That night, the French Quarter shimmered with leftover rain. The air smelled of powdered sugar and brass polish from the jazz bars down the block. Alma sat by Yvette's window with a notepad open across her knees. The lamp beside her flickered softly golden against the dark. Her handwriting was shaky, but sure, each line a reclaiming of voice. "Day 1, she wrote. "I walked out with nothing but a suitcase. Tonight, I have something priceless, my name." The laptop on the table chimed. Yvette hurried over and clicked open an email. "It's from Claiborne." Alma looked up. Yvette read aloud, her smile spreading with every word. "The injunction is approved, the funds are frozen. Bianca LaSalle cannot access or move the account pending investigation." Alma let out a long, trembling breath. "So it worked." Yvette grinned. "For now. But that woman's not done fighting. She'll claw and cry and lie." Alma looked out the window. Across the street, the magnolia tree glowed white beneath a street lamp, its blossoms opening despite the night. "She can scream all she wants," Alma murmured, "but she won't silence me again." The clock ticked past midnight. A saxophone moaned somewhere distant, low and sweet. Alma closed her notepad and leaned back, letting the sound wash over her. For the first time in months, her chest didn't ache. The world outside was still full of cruelty, still uncertain, but she was no longer part of the silence. Yvette brought 2 mugs of tea. "To Day 1, she said, raising hers. Alma clinked her cup gently, and to every day after. Outside, the city exhaled with her soft alive and waiting. The next morning, Alma's tea had gone cold before she even touched it. Her phone silent all night, suddenly buzzed with a name she hadn't seen in days, Wesley. Her heart stumbled. For a moment, she didn't know whether to answer. Then she did. "Mom," his voice rushed out, trembling and tired. "Thank God you picked up." "Where are you?" Alma hesitated. "I'm safe." "Safe," he repeated, as if the word offended him. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Bianca's been sick with worry? She said you left without your medication." Alma's voice hardened. "I don't take medication, Wesley." A pause. Then softer. "Mom, please don't do this. You've been confused lately. You forgot the roast in the oven, you stop." Her tone was quiet, but final. "You're repeating her words, not yours." "I'm just trying to help," he insisted. "She showed me paperwork, medical notes, even your signature." "My forged signature," Alma interrupted. the one she used to steal from your father's estate. Silence. Only the faint static of the line. When Wesley spoke again, his voice cracked. She said, "You weren't well enough to handle finances. That she was just protecting you." Alma closed her eyes. If protection means taking what isn't hers, then she's doing a fine job. Mom, don't talk like that. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Alma said. You watched her throw me out of the house I paid for. You stood there while she called me useless. The sound of Wesley's breathing filled the silence. Finally, he whispered, "I didn't know it was this bad." Behind his words, Alma heard movement, heels clicking, a faint whisper. Then Bianca's voice, sharp but low. "Ask her where she is. We can send someone." Alma almost smiled. "Tell your wife," she said softly, "that her lies won't buy her another day." Mom. She hung up. For a long moment, she stared at the silent phone. Her reflection in the black screen looked calm, too calm. Yvette leaned in from the doorway. "That him?" "Yes, Alma," said, voice steady. "And she was right beside him." "Then she knows you're still fighting." Alma nodded slowly, setting the phone down. "Good," she said. "Let her feel what it's like to be afraid." Outside, thunder rolled again over New Orleans, low, promising close. By mid-afternoon, the air had turned heavy again, thunder lurking just beyond the Mississippi. Alma and Yvette sat by the kitchen window when the phone rang. "Mr. Claiborne." Yvette put him on speaker. Mrs. Brooks came, his calm, precise voice. "I've been in contact with Silverline Pictures' legal department. They've confirmed several disturbing details." Alma straightened. "Go on?" Claiborne shuffled papers on his desk. They could almost hear the weight of them through the line. "Your daughter-in-law submitted not only a forged authorization letter, but also a medical affidavit claiming you were in early stages of dementia, signed by a Dr. Peterson, who it turns out doesn't exist." Yvette gasped. "She forged a doctor too." Claiborne's tone sharpened. "Yes. We've already forwarded the materials to the state attorney's office. The studio's compliance team is cooperating. They've frozen all royalties and will testify if needed. You're in the clear, Mrs. Brooks." Alma's chest tightened. "In the clear." The words sounded unreal fragile. "You've done nothing wrong," Claiborne said gently. "But I'll be honest, Mrs. LaSalle's been very persuasive. She told everyone she was protecting you, even hinted you'd started wandering off." "She's laid the groundwork for months," Yvette snorted. "That woman could charm the devil into signing a lease." Alma gave a hollow laugh. "And he'd regret it." Claiborne continued, "We'll need you to sign an official statement tomorrow morning. I've arranged a notary and a police liaison standard for fraud cases of this scope. Once it's filed, she'll be notified of the investigation." Yvette grinned. "So she'll finally get the knock on her door." "That's right," Claiborne confirmed. "And judging by her pattern of deceit, I'd expect her to panic." Alma's fingers traced the rim of her teacup. The steam had faded, but her blood felt hot. "Let her panic," she said softly. "She took my peace. I'll take back my name." Thunder cracked above the house, rattling the shutters. Yvette raised her cup in a mock toast. "To Justice Cher." Alma's lips curved, calm but dangerous. "No," she said. "To truth. Justice comes after." Outside, a gust of wind swept through the magnolia branches, sending petals tumbling across the porch like falling snow. The storm had officially begun. The next morning dawned heavy with humidity. The sky over the quarter a dull, pewter gray. Alma wore her best navy dress, the one Harold had always said, made her look like she still had fight in her. Yvette insisted on going with her. "If Bianca shows up at that office," she said, slipping on her hoop earrings, "I'll make sure she leaves in handcuffs or high heels, whichever comes first." At Claiborne's office, a police liaison waited by the door. A quiet woman with a badge clipped to her jacket. The air smelled of old books ink and rain-damp paper. "Morning, Mrs. Brooks." Claiborne greeted, rising from behind his desk. You look determined. Alma smiled faintly. Determined beats broken. He nodded approvingly and slid a folder across the table. Here's your formal statement, reviewed, notarized, ready for your signature. Alma read slowly, her finger tracing each line. Forgery, fraud, false representation of medical incapacity, misappropriation of funds. Each word burned, but she signed anyway, her hand steady as a blade. The officer countersigned and left to file the statement. Once the door shut, Claiborne exhaled. That's one step done. Now there's something else. I need to show you something worse. He opened another file. Inside were scanned documents, email threads, scanned forms, and one chilling title. Transfer of copyright ownership. Yvette leaned forward. What the hell is that? Claiborne's jaw tightened. 2 weeks ago, Mrs. LaSalle attempted to submit this form to the Copyright Office under your name, transferring all rights of Harold Brooks' design catalog to a shell company, LaSalle Holdings. Alma's eyes widened. All of it. Yes, Claiborne said grimly. Every sketch, every future royalty. It was dated and notarized with a falsified seal. If it had gone through, you'd have lost every legal claim to your husband's work permanently. Yvette slapped the desk. She was trying to erase Harold too. Alma stared at the papers, her throat tightening. She wanted to own even his memory. Claiborne's expression softened. But the timing saved you. The real notarization office flagged inconsistencies before it was processed. Her arrogance made her sloppy. He handed Alma a printed email. It was from Bianca, written in her usual polished tone. Please expedite this submission. My mother-in-law is declining quickly, and I'd like to finalize matters before her condition worsens. Yvette read the line aloud, shaking her head. She actually wrote that God, she makes it sound like you were dying. Alma's hands curled into fists. She killed me on paper because she couldn't do it in person. Claiborne nodded gravely. The state attorney's office has already opened a case for attempted estate fraud. Once your testimony is filed, they'll issue a notice of investigation. So it's official. Yvette said, a grin cutting through her anger. Bianca LaSalle's about to be famous for all the wrong reasons. Alma picked up Harold's old pen from the table, the same one she'd brought in her purse. The metal felt cool and alive. She thought I was just some tired widow with shaky hands, she said softly. But these hands built her house, fed her child, and paid her bills. Now they'll sign the papers that end her game. Claiborne met her eyes. Mrs. Brooks, you've just reclaimed your husband's legacy. Alma's voice was calm, but her gaze was fierce. No, she said. I've reclaimed myself. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the magnolia branches against the window. Somewhere, distant church bells began to toll, low, rhythmic, and certain. The air outside Claiborne's office was thick and electric, that tense quiet that came before New Orleans rain. Alma and Yvette stepped onto the sidewalk, the folder of signed documents tucked tightly beneath Alma's arm. Feels lighter, Yvette asked. Like breathing after a long storm, Alma said. They were halfway down the block when Alma's phone buzzed. A text from Wesley. Mom, Bianca wants to talk. She's sorry. She wants to apologize in person. Please meet us tonight at the house. Alma's pulse quickened. Her house? The one Bianca had thrown her out of. Yvette leaned over her shoulder, reading the message. Oh no, Cher. That smells like bait. Alma frowned. He wouldn't lie to me. Maybe not, Yvette said carefully, but she would. And she's desperate now. Cornered people don't apologize, they bite. Alma stared at the message thumb hovering above the screen. The thought of seeing Wesley again tugged at something soft inside her, but the memory of Bianca's voice. Get out of my house, I dare you. Cut through the ache. I won't go alone, she said finally. Yvette's brows lifted. You're thinking of going? Yes, Alma replied. If she's brave enough to face me, I'll give her that chance. But if it's a trap, she won't see me come unarmed. Yvette smirked. That's the Alma I know. They started walking again, the magnolia trees above them, rustling in a hot wind that smelled like thunder. Alma slipped her phone into her purse, her eyes narrowing with quiet fire. Let her talk, she murmured, then let her fall. Somewhere behind them, the first drops of rain began to fall, slow, heavy, deliberate. The rain returned by nightfall, hard and sudden, hammering the streets until puddles gleamed like oil. Alma stood before the tall iron gate of the house she'd once called home, her umbrella trembling slightly in the wind. The porch lights were on. Through the windows she could see warm light and movement inside shadows, pacing. Yvette's voice came through the car window behind her. You sure you want to do this alone? Alma nodded. If she wants to talk, she'll see I can still stand on my own 2 feet. She walked to the door and rang the bell. The sound echoed through the house like a heartbeat. The door opened. Bianca stood there, dressed in cream silk, her hair perfectly arranged, her smile rehearsed. For a fleeting second, Alma thought she almost looked relieved until she saw the calculation behind her eyes. Bianca breathed. Thank God. You're here. Alma didn't move. You invited me. Remember, Bianca stepped aside. Come in, please. Wesley's upstairs. He's been sick with worry. Alma crossed the threshold. The scent of jasmine candles mixed with bleach filled the air. Everything looked spotless. Too spotless, like a stage. Her heels clicked across the marble that once felt like home. Coffee, Bianca offered sweetly. I'll pass, Alma replied. I've learned what happens when I let you serve me things. A flicker of irritation crossed Bianca's perfect face. You've always been dramatic, Alma. I just wanted to make peace. We've both said things we regret. Alma's eyes swept the room. Her photos gone from the walls, replaced by Bianca's wedding portraits and designer art. Funny, she said, I don't see anything of mine left here. Not even the ghost of me. Bianca's smile wavered. Let's not start again. Oh, I'm not starting anything, Alma said evenly. I'm finishing it. She placed her purse on the table, opened it, and slid a folder across the marble. The official stamped letterhead of Claiborne and Hartwell, visible beneath the clear plastic. Bianca's expression faltered. What's this proof? Alma said softly. Your forged signatures? Your fake doctor? Your little company, LaSalle Holdings? You've been very busy. Bianca laughed, but it cracked halfway through. You think you can scare me with paperwork? I did everything for this family. For Wesley. Alma's voice lowered, steady as thunder. You did it for money. You turned my son against me, and when that wasn't enough, you stole my husband's legacy. Bianca's eyes flashed. He's my husband, Alma, not yours. He's my son. Alma snapped the words, slicing through the air. And you used him as your weapon. The silence that followed was alive with the sound of rain slamming the windows. Bianca straightened, mask slipping. You want to play the victim, fine. But you're the one who begged to live here. You needed me. You were losing your memory, forgetting your pills, wandering off. I wasn't forgetting. Alma interrupted. You hid things. You replaced my medication with vitamins, turned off the stove so you could call me dangerous. You built the story you needed. Bianca's voice dropped to a hiss. You can't prove that. Alma smiled, a cold, quiet smile that carried years of patience breaking open. I don't have to, she said. The studio, the police, and Claiborne already did. The words hit Bianca like a slap. Her perfect posture cracked, her eyes darted toward the staircase. Wesley doesn't know. He doesn't. I know enough. Both women turned. Wesley stood halfway down the stairs, his face pale hair, damp hands shaking. He'd heard every word. Wesley, Bianca stammered. She's lying. Stop. His voice broke. I saw the emails. Claiborne sent me copies. You forged her name. You lied to me, Bianca. Her eyes filled with tears, but there was no sincerity in them, only fury. I did it for us, Wesley's voice trembled. You did it for you. Bianca looked between them, mother and son, united again, and for the first time she understood she'd lost. You think this is over, she whispered, voice brittle. You'll regret this. Both of you. Alma stepped closer, rain-soaked hair framing her face like silver fire. No, my dear, she said softly. I already did my regretting. She reached for her purse and turned to leave. Wesley followed her to the door. Bianca's voice cracked behind them, furious and desperate. You'll lose everything. Alma didn't look back. Then I'll still have more than you ever did. The door closed with a final echoing click. Outside, thunder rolled low across the French Quarter, and the rain softened to a steady hush, the sound of an ending finally beginning. The rain had thinned to a mist by morning, leaving the city washed clean. The magnolias outside Yvette's window shone white against the wet brick, their petals glistening like tiny mirrors of light. Alma sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee that had gone cold hours ago. She wasn't thinking about Bianca's face anymore. She was thinking about silence, about how peaceful it felt when a battle ended. Her phone rang. Mr. Claiborne. She answered. Mrs. Brooks? He said, his tone measured but tinged with satisfaction. The district attorney's office has officially opened proceedings against Mrs. LaSalle. Charges include forgery, identity theft, and elder financial exploitation. They're requesting all remaining evidence, the studio call recordings, the signature samples, and your written statement. I've already arranged delivery. Alma's voice was steady. So it's really happening. It is. And one more thing, the studio wants to publicly restore Harold Brooks' name to the design credits. His legacy will be recognized again properly. For a long moment, Alma said nothing. Then softly, Thank you, Mr. Claiborne, for believing me. He paused. It wasn't belief, Mrs. Brooks. It was proof and strength. You never stopped fighting. When she hung up, she noticed Yvette standing in the doorway, arms folded, smiling. Justice looks good on you, Cher. Before Alma could reply, the doorbell rang. Wesley stood there, soaked from the drizzle, his eyes red and swollen. Mom! He began, but his voice cracked. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. She told me. Alma raised a hand gently. I know, Wesley. He stepped forward, tears slipping down his cheeks. I should have protected you. I just wanted peace, and I let her turn that into control. She studied him for a long moment, then reached up and touched his face like she had when he was 10, crying over scraped knees. Peace isn't something you get by pretending, son, she said softly. You have to earn it. He nodded, eyes full of shame. I'm ready to start. Alma gave a faint smile. Then sit. The coffee's cold, but forgiveness is warm enough. Yvette chuckled from the kitchen. And I'll make fresh beignets for new beginnings. Outside, the last drops of rain slid from the magnolia petals. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of thunder, the scent of truth finally free. The courthouse on Poydras Street gleamed under a pale sun, its stone steps slick with last night's rain. Alma climbed them slowly beside Wesley. Her navy dress pressed her locket tucked close against her heart. Every step echoed with a kind of gravity she hadn't felt in years, not fear, not pride, just truth finding its way home. Inside, the marble halls smelled of paper coffee and polished wood. Cameras flashed at the entrance, local reporters buzzing about the LaSalle fraud case. Yvette had warned her it would draw attention, but Alma barely noticed. She wasn't here for the headlines. Claiborne met them near the courtroom door, briefcase in hand, calm as always. Everything's set, he said. Your statement will be entered into the record today. After that, The DA's office will proceed with formal charges. Bianca will be arraigned this afternoon. Wesley swallowed hard. Will she be here? Claiborne nodded. They're bringing her in now. And then, as if conjured by guilt itself, Bianca appeared escorted by 2 deputies. Her silk and diamonds were gone. In their place, a gray suit and shackles that clinked softly with each step. She still lifted her chin, still tried to summon that perfect smile, but her eyes darted toward Alma, searching for mercy she hadn't earned. Alma didn't look away. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak. She simply stood, dignified hands clasped before her. For a moment, the 2 women just stared at one another, the thief and the survivor. Bianca's lips trembled. I didn't mean. But Alma quietly shook her head. You meant every word. That's what makes it hurt. The deputies led Bianca forward. The reporters whispered pens, scratching shutters, snapping. Wesley reached for his mother's hand, voice low. I don't know how you can stand here so calm. Alma turned toward him, eyes gentle. Because anger keeps you chained to the moment they hurt you. I'm not living there anymore. Claiborne smiled faintly. Mrs. Brooks, that's something even the law can't teach. When the judge entered the room, fell silent. The sound of rain outside returned soft, distant cleansing. As Alma signed her last document, she felt the pen glide smooth, sure, final. This wasn't revenge. It was release. Outside, the magnolia trees swayed against the courthouse steps, scattering white petals like blessings on the wind. The following week, the air in Bywater carried the scent of blooming jasmine and rain-washed earth. Alma's new apartment wasn't grand, 2 rooms, a balcony, and an old ceiling fan that hummed when the wind came through. But it was hers. Sunlight poured through the lace curtains, painting golden ribbons across her little writing desk. On it sat a neat pile of envelopes, one from Claiborne, one from the studio. She opened the first. Dear Mrs. Brooks, the Louisiana State Court has officially restored your ownership and copyright to all original designs created by Harold Brooks. His name will appear in the upcoming film credits as Harold Brooks, original costume design. Alma smiled. For the first time, Harold's name would live again, not as a footnote in someone else's life, but as art reborn. She unfolded the second letter, printed on silver stationery, with the studio's crest embossed at the top. We'd be honored if you attended the film's premiere next spring. The designs you and your late husband created still define the soul of New Orleans, timeless, elegant, unforgettable. Her hand trembled slightly as she read. The words weren't about money or reputation, they were about recognition. Yvette entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. So she asked, What's that grin about? Alma looked up, eyes glistening. Harold's name is coming home. Yvette smiled. Then so are you, Cher. They stood by the window sipping tea as the magnolia trees outside swayed gently in the morning breeze. The city was waking alive again. Somewhere, a trumpet called from a far corner. Slow, hopeful, free. Alma traced the rim of her cup and whispered almost to herself. He said magnolias. Bloom after every storm. Yvette leaned her head on her shoulder. And look, they did. Outside, the first sunlight of spring cut through the clouds, spilling gold over the wet rooftops. The storm was gone, and what remained was the quiet grace of survival. The afternoon sun hung low over Bywater, spilling honeyed light across the community garden. The air smelled of damp soil, rosemary, and blooming magnolias, Alma's doing. She knelt in the dirt beside a row of herbs, her hands steady and sure. Around her, a few neighborhood women worked Miss Jean with her wide-brimmed hat, young Rosalind, humming softly as she watered the mint beds. Your magnolia's taking over that corner again, Miss Jean teased, leaning on her shovel. Alma smiled, brushing soil from her palms. Magnolias don't ask permission to grow? They just do. Jean chuckled. You sound like a woman who's learned to bloom her own way. Alma sat back, watching the wind ripple through the leaves. Maybe I finally have. Rosalind knelt beside her. Miss Alma, is it true what they said on the news about that woman trying to take everything from you? Alma's eyes softened. It's true. But she didn't take the most important thing. What's that? My peace? Alma said. It took me a while to find it, but I'm keeping it now right here. She pressed a hand over her chest, then gestured to the soil. And here. The women nodded silently, understanding, without needing words. A breeze passed through, scattering a few magnolia petals across Alma's knees. She caught one and twirled it between her fingers, pure, white, delicate, resilient. When life tries to bury you, she said softly, remember, sometimes it's just planting you. The others smiled, letting the words settle into the quiet hum of the garden. In the distance, a church bell chimed. Children laughed on the sidewalk. The sound of a trumpet drifted through the air again, the same song Alma had once listened to through rain-streaked glass. She rose slowly, stretching her back. All right, ladies, she said. Let's make something grow worth remembering. And as she bent once more to tend the soil, sunlight broke through the clouds, turning every magnolia petal into gold. That evening, the apartment was bathed in soft amber light. The air was still the city calm after a long, heavy summer day. Alma sat at her desk by the window, a fresh sheet of paper before her. Harold's old fountain pen balanced between her fingers. She began to write. My dearest Harold, it's been 3 years since I lost you, but somehow I found my way back to us. She paused, smiling faintly at the ink stain spreading on her thumb, the same way it always had when he wrote his sketches. You'd be proud. They're restoring your name, your designs, your work. But more than that, I've restored mine. I found my voice again, Harold. I learned I'm not the woman they said I was. I'm stronger than their stories. The magnolia outside the window swayed gently in the evening breeze. Its petals brushed against the glass as if listening. Bianca's gone now. Justice came, but I didn't need it to breathe. Forgiveness did that. Wesley's finding his way back too. I think you'd like the man he's becoming. Alma's hand trembled, but not from age, from peace. You once told me magnolias bloom after every storm. You were right. I'm blooming, Harold. Maybe not as bright, but I'm still here. Still yours. She signed it simply, with love always. Alma. Folding the letter, she placed it beside Harold's framed sketch, the one he'd drawn of her laughing under magnolia trees. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of jazz from a distant street corner, a love song soft enough to belong only to them. Morning spilled through the curtains like gold. The city below was already alive, the clatter of streetcars, the laughter of children walking to school, the sizzle of beignets from the corner cafe. Alma stepped out onto her small balcony, wrapped in her robe, a cup of chicory coffee warming her hands. The air was clean after last night's brief rain, carrying the scent of magnolia and fresh bread. The tree below her window stood in full bloom white blossoms stretching toward the rising sun. She leaned on the railing, watching the petals sway and fall like gentle snow. For a long moment, she simply breathed. No fear, no anger, just the quiet rhythm of life returning. Across the street, a little girl in braids skipped toward her mother, holding a single magnolia flower like a treasure. She waved it proudly before running off. Alma smiled. That small gesture, so simple, so free, felt like a gift from the universe itself. Her eyes lifted to the horizon where the rooftops shimmered in light. She thought of Harold, his laughter, his sketches, his belief that beauty always comes back. He'd been right about that. Yvette's voice floated up from the sidewalk below. Morning, Cher. The garden club's waiting. You bringing those famous hands of yours." Alma laughed softly. "Give me 5 minutes. These magnolias still have something to tell me." She turned back toward the city one last time, sunlight warming her face. The wind stirred, carrying the faint sound of jazz, soft, hopeful, alive. Alma closed her eyes, whispering to the air, "I finally remember who I am." And as the trumpet lifted somewhere down the block, the camera of morning pulled wide, the magnolia tree glowing against the skyline petals, drifting like blessings over New Orleans. It wasn't an ending. It was the beginning she'd waited her whole life to write. How did this story touch you? Tell us in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. If it moved your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the so you won't miss our next emotional story. And before you go, click on the end screen to discover more powerful, heartwarming tales waiting just for you. See you in the next story.